Hello everybody, Blake here. We're gonna do a cleaning video today. I got someone to help me out here, so we're gonna clean up this tube bell. This is the 80s too. We're gonna see, I don't know how much of that staining I can get out, but we're gonna make sure the nozzle ring gets cleaned up really good. Just make sure all that inside there gets cleaned really well. Inside the power chamber will shine up. I know it's pretty shiny already, but I'm just gonna basically use this bell as a good example of how I do my cleaning process. It's basically just a two-step process. It's been soaking in PB Blaster for a while. We'll get some Scotch-Brite pads on it. I'll show you just kind of everything that I do for like scrubbing it. It's pretty labor intensive sometimes. This is basically just showing you guys how I do things. I know everybody kind of has their own way of cleaning things, so this is just kind of me showing you guys how I do stuff. But we'll start off with the Scotch-Brite. We'll hit it really good, get everything that we can inside and outside, and then we'll rinse off the bell really well, and then we will come back at it with some Dawn to get rid of any of the leftover from the PB Blaster off of there and just kind of make it even a little bit more shinier. So we'll get some PB Blaster. I know I already got quite a bit on there. I like to use quite a bit. Start off with a new pad. Try not to talk too much. It's basically all you guys are seeing is just how I scrub on things. Any of the staining that's on the nozzle here, we'll try and get that completely clean, so we'll put some scrubbing time into that. Just that way it's sounding nice and clean and clear. And I kind of rub it off with my thumb just so I can kind of see like how clean we're getting there, because you do get this like build up on there just from all the dirt and everything. I like Scotch-Brite because it works really good to get the stuff that you can get, the stuff that's not stained too deep, and it doesn't really it does like put micro scratches in the metal, but it doesn't affect the sound at all. So that's why I like using this. I don't media blast or anything like that. And then I'll also clean out the nozzle, and then up against the nozzle ring, and that. So clean up the bore really good. I normally go around a couple times, just making sure everything's really good. Try and check it as I go. And you guys can see that it gets like that black just build up from the dirt and everything. Normally I just try and clear that away with my finger while I'm doing this, just so I can kind of keep track of everything. And I normally start off with the cleaning the nozzle ring and then the outer ring really well, since those two get the most crap built up on them from the diaphragms and all that. So like as I'm kind of concentrating more on the nozzle, I am also scrubbing the outer ring as well at the same time. So it's looking pretty good. Pretty happy with that. There's just a little bit of stuff that we can't get on there, but it feels really good. Not feeling anything rough. So we should be good on that. Gonna go around again here. And we'll give it another hit with some PB Blaster. Just kind of clean things up a little bit here. So that looks pretty good. So now we'll concentrate right where the nozzle meets the bore. I like to make sure that area, the whole bore area, is super clean. Basically, I'll just kind of bunch it up and get it to where I can jam it in the corner there. This is basically what I do as a clean. I just constantly rotate the bell, so that way I'm not just concentrating on one area more than the other. I get a nice even clean all the way around. And I'm also cleaning the bore while I'm doing that, but then I like to go back and make sure just the bore itself gets some attention. And it's kind of nice. I like that the power chamber kind of holds PB Blaster, because then I can get it on my finger and kind of rewipe some areas, and I don't always have to respray. I try and keep enough on there. I don't like to get too dry as I'm cleaning this, because then it just doesn't seem like you make really good progress, just dry materials here. It's looking pretty good. I'll give it a little spray here. So that's looking really good. Not too much staining in the bore, a little bit of stuff here and there, but real smooth, real clean. The inside edge looks really good now. So now I'll start kind of cleaning the outer wall of the power chamber. Basically, it's just a lot of scrubbing. Nothing too fancy. There's definitely going to be some real deep staining that I'm not going to be able to get out. Like I said, I'm not really worried about staining, especially in the power chamber. Just as long as I get it clean to the touch. I know there's no loose particulate in there that can fly around and start to attack the relationship between the diaphragm and the nozzle ring. I just basically do my best to shine it up as good as I can. Some bells that don't have staining in it, they shine up beautifully on the inside. This is really the only area that I deal with staining that I can't get out. I haven't really run into too much staining on the exterior of a bell. I have some bells that have minor staining on the outside, but I've been able to get it out for the better part. This interior stuff, though, it's really drove in there through the years of being blown and all that stuff, so it's really on there. But like I said, I don't worry about that too much, just as long as we get it really good and clean. It's the same thing, I'll rotate it as I go. Hit it a few times. I don't have a set rotation. I just kind of go by how it's looking. Check it every now and then. Once I'm done over here, basically all I do is I just take Q-tips and lacquer thinner, and I will put them down into the hole there, and I'll clean out anything that's built up over the years through either the air system or what's getting in there right now just from me scrubbing it. So I always make sure that the inlets get really cleaned out. Spray some more in there so I can kind of see what's going on. So you can see some of the staining that's in there. That's the stuff I can't get out. That stuff is really, really on there. But other than that, you can see it's shiny in the areas that it's able to be just fine. The outer wall looks to be in pretty good shape. A little bit of staining here and there, nothing too crazy. But that'll be just fine. So then once I'm done, I'll start to scrub the inside of the power chamber, the inner wall. Like I said, basically my goal here is just to make sure anything that could eventually work itself loose is out of there. And that I'm not going to have a bunch of stuff floating around as the air is coming through. Because I do have some bells that have damage on the nozzle from particulate being in here floating around and then eventually getting trapped in between the diaphragm and the nozzle, and then basically wormholing itself through the nozzle over time. And I also make sure that the feet where the ring goes, make sure those are clean. So the diffuser sits in there really nice. It's not sitting on a bunch of crap either. And one of the parts that we really want to pay attention is right where the foot for the ring, and then that corner there. A lot of crap gets built up in there, so it kind of takes an extra minute to make sure we get all the way up against that area. Especially around the inlet. This one, it's not a whole lot of staining around the inlet. There's a little bit on the bottom, but a lot of times I've seen a really bad staining in the lower part here, and then it won't be so bad up top. But this one's actually got more staining up top. So. So the interior looks pretty good. I'll make sure my outer rings are all clean now that we're done on the inside. And actually, before I do that, we're gonna clean out the throat of the bell. So basically I just spray PB Blaster down in there and then just kind of work this around for a little bit. Normally this part of it goes pretty easy. The 5 bells are a little bit harder just because they have a much smaller throat, and it's kind of hard to get your finger and the pad down in there at the same time. So even though that looks like a mess, it's actually pretty clean in there. So that'll wash up really nice. So now we can start working on some of these outer rings here. And also I make sure that this this vent hole is cleaned out. I'll take a little Allen wrench and I'll just kind of shove it around down in there. Sometimes soot from the locomotive exhaust will actually really clog these holes up. I've had a few that were completely blocked, so I just kind of take this and run it around in there. Kind of see some of the crap you get out of there. So we'll go back to scrubbing this. A lot of the bells that I've cleaned that were painted or still painted with the actual locomotive paint, some of that likes to creep down in between the back cap and the back surface here of the power chamber. And I try and get any and all paint off of that. I just want to make sure that it's going to sit down as far as possible and I have a good relationship in between those parts. Basically, once we get the power chamber cleaned up and this back area all cleaned up, the rest of the bell is a lot easier. This is just a lot of little details that I take some time to look over really well, make sure I don't miss any little thing. And then you can see as I run my finger, get some of the crap off of there. It's pretty clean underneath there. I also pay really close attention to these mating points right here. I make sure that I try and get that clean. A lot of buildup can occur in those areas. So I'll kind of take this and I'll try and get it right on my fingernail so that way I can get right on that corner. I've even had a lot of staining in this area that sometimes you just can't get that stuff out, but as long as it's really clean, feels smooth, it's pretty good. And then I'll just kind of try and wipe everything off. Make sure that we're looking really good on all these surfaces here. Everything looks pretty good. Give it one more quick wipe down here. Alright, so that all looks pretty good. The outer ring got cleaned as we were cleaning everything. A little bit of stuff in there just from the diaphragm vibrating, but that ain't gonna hurt nothing. Nozzle ring looks really good. Just a little bit of really ground in stuff that I can't get out, but that won't really affect the sound at all. Just as long as she's really clean, that'll be good. So the internals are done. So now we'll start working on the exterior of the bell. We'll start with the outer edge of the power chamber here. So you can see you wipe that stuff away and it's pretty shiny. It's basically what I'm looking for, is just to make sure get what I can that's ground in, make it nice and shiny. And then if I ever decide to paint this horn, then basically all I will do is I'll just give it a rub down with a lacquer thinner to get anything from my hands, any oils from my hands off of it, and then she'll be ready for paint. Not sure if I'm going to paint the horn that this bell is going on yet. I'm sure I will. I just don't know what color quite yet. You can see these pads, they get a lot of crud built up on them. Normally I go through, I try and only go through two pads a bell. I try and make them last as long as possible, but some of them get pretty grimy and dirty, and then they don't work as quite as well as the brand new one. So the outer edge is looking pretty good, so now we'll start doing the face of the power chamber here. Kind of a hard spot to get to is right at the back of the foot here, that little part. Sometimes you really gotta work this stuff down in there. And then also the back of the foot. Scrub all that out really good, so that way if and when I do paint it, the paint will stick. You'll have a good clean surface in there to stick to. The foot of the bell can kind of be a hard thing to clean, just because there's all these tight little areas that's kind of hard to get your fingers into. And then we'll also make sure the bottom of the foot gets cleaned as well as possible. I've seen a lot of really bad staining on these, like this one's got kind of a spot right there, just because over time moisture and soot and everything can creep its way in there, make a mess. So I'll just scrub it really good, get it as clean as possible, and then that'll be plenty good enough. I also take Q-tips with lacquer thinner and I clean out the area where the gasket goes. But this particular bell is going to get a cork gasket, so we're not even going to use that area. But I'll still make sure all that's really nice and clean before putting it together. And then, especially with this being a raised circle, sometimes like paint and grime and buildup can really get in the corners of that circle. This one's not too bad. And it's kind of hard to scrub on it because the pad likes to catch on the circle. Should we clean the top of the foot? The foot, all around the foot, definitely takes a minute, just because there's a lot of different areas and angles, and some of them are pretty tight to get into. She looks pretty good. So now we got all around the foot pretty good. Give the face of the power chamber here a good spray. I think this, I might use this. We'll just use a new one. So that way the rest of the bell comes out really good. So normally I try and take my time and I give this surface its own attention, and then I give this surface its own attention. I don't try and just do it all at once. And it gets looking pretty dirty while you're scrubbing it, but then you go and wipe it off and it's pretty shiny underneath. And as I'm doing this surface, I'm making sure this corner right here gets done really good. And then I'll even try and hit that while I do this surface. And then as I'm doing this surface, I'm making sure this transition to the throat of the bell gets cleaned up as good as possible. A lot of buildup can happen in these two areas. Basically, after using this stuff, you kind of get a almost a like a brushed aluminum look, which is fine for me. I don't know if I'll ever actually polish all horn to a mirror finish, because then I probably wouldn't want to touch it at all afterwards. And most of these are going to get painted anyway. I am going to have a few that are staying unpainted. And I'll probably wind up doing, I'll clean them really well and do a, maybe do a clear coat over the bare metal, so that way it doesn't take any oils from fingerprints or anything like that, but we'll see what I end up doing with some of these. And I do kind of float back and forth from one to the other, just trying to get everything. Once I get a good initial scrub on a surface. So you can see that looks pretty shiny once we wipe all that crap away. So I'd say the face of the power chamber is done, foot's done, so now we can transition to the actual bell, the throat of the bell. Kind of respray some of that. can's about out. And then you can see the PB Blaster kind of cleans some of that away, and it will look really nice once we get all that stuff washed off. So now I kind of flip it over and I'll work my way down. I kind of try and concentrate on just certain areas because the bigger the bell, the more time it takes, and gets kind of long after a while scrubbing on one bell. And then especially where they grind away the casting lines here, a lot of crap can get built up in there. Sometimes that stuff's kind of hard to get out completely. And I kind of just do small circular motions like that for the whole thing. A lot of it's just trying to get the right angle on some of this stuff. So that all looks pretty clean underneath there. So I'll flip it back over, spray some more of the good stuff on there. And you can see how it's kind of hard to see how clean it is underneath that stuff. I just basically give it a really good scrub down, try and hit areas multiple times so I don't have to waste too much time constantly wiping that away and looking at it, but you guys can see it's pretty nice underneath all that. And I just try to do it pretty uniformed all over. Like I said, I don't try and sit in one area for too long. And this is the harder part of the cleaning, the actual initial deep scrubbing here. The second part, we still go over all the same areas, same order. It's just a little bit easier because we've already got a lot of the dirt and everything off. Basically all we're doing is going back and cleaning up whatever residue is left from the PB Blaster. It rinses off pretty good, but it does still kind of leave a film on there sometimes. So the body of the bell is pretty good. Looks really nice underneath all that crap. Got a couple, I think that's actually a paint spot right there. Now we can come back with some lacquer thinner and take care of that little spot, no big deal. Let me make sure this transition into the flare of the bell gets cleaned up really good, especially right around the edge here. Sometimes the casting is a little messy and you can get some crap in there that doesn't always want to come off. Especially some of these deeper areas, but normally that stuff's not a big deal. I just make sure that I've hit every square inch of this thing, because I don't ever really want to waste the time having to go back after I've cleaned it off with soap and water and then get it all messy again. So now that's done, we'll do the outer edge here. It's pretty simple. Some of these get pretty wore down from debris covers and the shower caps and all that stuff. Or some of them have deeper lining in them from the factory doing some grinding of some of the overcast. And I'll just kind of go around that a couple times, making sure I'm kind of getting the whole top ridge there, so once I get to the inside I know that this part is done. So that's pretty good. So now we'll start on the inside. And it's the same deal. I just kind of do nice even circular motions. And I'll kind of start on the outside, work my way inside, get down as deep as I can, and then kind of just do a nice rub down on my way back out. And rotate it as I go. So that looks pretty good underneath that. And basically, I just try, I do about finger width of the pad, hold on to it, and I just kind of get down in there. Just do circular motions, get down as far as I can. Some of the longer bells, it's really hard to get it super duper clean down in there, just because it gets to be pretty, kind of a long distance. Unlike the ones, and especially the 1Ls. But normally if you're painting, the paint only gets so far down in there anyway. It's looking pretty good. Spray some of this down in there. And you can see this stuff will kind of clear away some of that mess, and then you can start to see the nice shiny metal underneath. Then you can kind of look if there's any areas if you've missed. It looks pretty good, so we'll just give her one more quick rub down here. And I'll try and rotate the bell 2 different directions while I do this, just to kind of try and mimic that brushed aluminum look. So that's probably pretty good. So now that part's done, we'll go ahead and rinse all that stuff off. And you can see I use washcloths for everything. I try to, I'm not too worried about the sink itself. I just don't want to ding up the bell a lot while I'm working, so I'll clean these off. Try and get all that PV Blaster and all the dirt from the bell out of these. Because next we'll be doing the more final clean. And I use full hot water. Open it all the way, no cold water. I clean this with pretty hot water. Now, once we do the rinse here, you'll really start to see that nice brushed aluminum look coming through. You see that's a lot cleaner than what it was. Like I said, you can see the water does pretty good, but I find that doing one more good clean really gets all the crap off of there, any leftover residue, and then kind of adds a little bit more shine to the overall finished product. But I always make sure I rinse out every part of the bell really good before I do the soap and water part of it. So you can see our nozzle ring and the bore is really nice. Outer rings are really good. You can see some of the staining that didn't come out. We're not worried about that. It will function and sound perfect as is. Now we'll take one of our good sponges here, and basically I only use the rough side of it, and I use quite a large amount of soap, so that way I'm not running too dry. So I'll basically repeat the same process. I'll go try and use both my fingers to span the bridge and clean both the rings, the nozzle ring and the outer ring. And basically just make sure I haven't missed anything. We'll go back in this the bore cut on the nozzle there. We'll scrub that out. Try and get my thumbnail right on the sponge. Really get in that corner. And we'll do the surface of the bore. And do the throat. Basically the same thing, I just get the sponge in there as far as I can with still being able to hold on to it. Rotate around. That gets the inside of that really nice and clean. And then we'll clean out the power chamber. And I'm basically scrubbing all the exact same areas the exact same way, only this time we're doing the final clean. We did our initial hard grime and dirt clean, so now we're just shining her up and getting whatever residues left over off. And to avoid a lot of water spotting, right after I do a final rinse, I will dry it immediately. So that way I don't get any more water spotting on any of my nice and clean areas. Because if you clean it and you just let it drip dry, you're going to wind up with a lot of water spots. I've had some do it, I've had some not do it, so it's just kind of whatever it wants to do basically. But I always make sure I dry it as soon as I'm done cleaning it, so that way I know everything's good. Especially with the really hot water that I'm using, it dries pretty quick, so that kind of helps me too. All that looks really nice and clean once we do the final rinse. Get all the soap suds out of there, that'll be really good. So, internals are done, so now we'll start back on the exterior of the bell. This goes a lot quicker. I just take the time to make sure that everything's as clean as I can possibly get it by hand here. So after we get the foot done, we'll go back to the face of the power chamber. Get in there really good. And you can see I kind of wet my sponge periodically. I just want to make sure everything stays wet and I'm not rubbing on anything too dry. And I also want to make sure I don't have too much of a buildup of anything where I can't see what I'm ending up with here, because this is going to be the final product once we're done with this part of the cleaning. We'll get some more soap on there. Start on the body of the bell here. And I do scrub this pretty aggressively just to make sure that I'm getting that really good final deep clean that I want. It does get pretty sudsy. Looks pretty good, so we'll start with the outer lip here. Even with taking my time and making sure I hit all the areas again, this portion of the cleaning goes a lot quicker. Make sure we get down into the throat really good again. Alright, so now we'll get our hands cleaned up good here. And we will rinse the bell off and see what our final product is. So already you can see that's a lot better than what it was. Nice and shiny, has that kind of brushed aluminum look. You can still see some of the original casting and some of the pitting just from the casting itself. None of that is anything that I'm worried about, because overall it is extremely clean as is. And like I said, whenever I do go to paint this bell, it'll paint up really, really nice. Everything's smooth. Another reason I don't like doing media blasting or sandblasting is it takes away your nice smooth finish and kind of pits it worse. But this is, I really take the time to make sure we get everything rinsed out really good. Like I said, this is really hot water. And there's basically your finished product. And you can see all the little micro scratches, and you can see all my circular patterns in there. I kind of like that brushed aluminum look, especially where the bell flares out. Looks really nice. You can see the internals. You can see all the staining, all the really deep staining that I could not get out. But everything else is extremely clean, and even that's like super clean to the touch. You could eat off of that and be fine. The nozzle ring is in really good shape, cleaned up really nice. The bore area cleaned up really nice. Our outer ring cleaned up really good. Everything in there cleaned up about what I would expect it to. The outside, the Got some soap suds in there. Power chamber. Face of the power chamber came out really nice. These areas cleaned up really good. A little bit of staining there, that's okay. So yeah, that's basically how I do it, guys. That's my two-step process. That's how I clean all my horns. Now, if I'm cleaning a bell or a whole horn that has original railroad paint on it, I will not use the rough side of the sponge, and I will not use pads. I'll not use the Scotch-Brite pads because that scratches up the paint. So if I'm actually trying to salvage the paint job, I will use the rough parts of the sponge and the pads for the internals, but I will make sure if when I go to do the actual painted side, I will do just a good clean with, I will use PB Blaster and I'll just kind of run it on there by hand and clean off any soot, and then I'll go back with the soft side of the sponge and clean that like that. So that's what I do if I have a painted horn that I want to keep the paint nice on. I still give the internals the business with the really rough stuff, clean all that up really good, and then I take care of the paint on the outside. But with a bare metal bell, it's a lot easier. I can just go at it and scrub the hell out of it and make it look really good. So hope you guys enjoyed the video, and let me know down in the comments what you think, and thank you very much.